Okay, this is notes 5 for Algebra 1. We are dividing real numbers using a calculator. Make sure you put your name, the date, and the class period. And then your essential question that you'll have to answer at the end of this notes is how to use a calculator to divide real numbers. This one should be pretty easy for you. One of our vocabulary words is the multiplicative inverse. Multiplicative inverse is the reciprocal of a non-zero number. And you might remember this. An example would be like having 5. So the multiplicative inverse of this would be basically putting it over 1 and having a 5. Another one, suppose I have 1/2. Then the multiplicative inverse would be 2. Suppose I had -2/3. The multiplicative inverse would be -3/2. It's just flipping it, keeping the sign. Okay, so if, for example, suppose I give you example number 1. I give you the number 9. What is the multiplicative inverse? Well, if I have a whole number, that means I have to make it a fraction, which means this would be 1/9 would be your answer. Okay. If I do example 2, if I give you -5/6, what's going to be your multiplicative inverse? Well, flip it. And the 5 was negative, so now the 6 is negative. Okay. Next section. Let me do a little zigzag. And that was finding multiplicative inverse. The next one just wants us to actually just divide our real numbers. We're just actually going to divide them. So the problems I'm going to give you, suppose we have, just to make sure our buttons are working okay, we have 25 divided by 5. If you put that in your calculator, it's going to look like 25 divided by 5, which that should be 5. Next example, number 4, if we have -40 divided by, and then I have a fraction, 2/3. That one's going to look a little different in your calculator. Let me grab my calculator. I'm going to type in -40. And then I have the divide. And now, since this is a fraction, I need to keep it together as a unit, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in parentheses. So that on my calculator I'll have a parentheses and then 2 divided by 3. And then make sure you close your parentheses, because I need to keep the fraction as a fraction, and that's what the parentheses will do, is keep it together. So I've got a bunch of divides in my problem, and if I push equal, I end up with -60 as my answer. And I believe if we do it all together on this particular problem, without the parentheses, do you see what happens? It changed it to -6.6666, and it's repeating. So this is how things change. You've got to have that fraction in parentheses. Alright, example number 5. I have 7 divided by 3. If I type this in my calculator, I'll have 7 divided by 3, and it gives me a repeating decimal. And if I do math frac to get it back to a fraction, it's right back at 7/3. So this one did not divide nicely. It gave me a decimal, so it means it does not simplify at all. It's just staying as 7/3. And the reason it didn't divide is these are both prime numbers. You can't divide prime numbers. Alright, next shift is we're actually going to be simplifying expressions. Okay. If I give you an expression, let's make this example 6, that is 48y minus 32 all divided by 8. Okay, this is a kind of a compound expression here. I'm actually going to visualize this as being separated into two fractions, so I'm going to put the 8 with the first term and the 8 with the second term, so that this is actually 48y divided by 8, and then I'll have negative 32 divided by 8. And realize this subtract, I've placed it with my 32. I didn't leave it alone, it went with my 32, so I do not have a symbol here yet. It's with the 32. If I actually simplify this now, 48 divided by 8, if you don't know it, type it in your calculator. 48 divided by 8 is actually 6y. And then negative 32 divided by 8, if you don't know your answer, then type it in and see that it is negative 4. So when I write this in my equation, I put this as a minus 4, and there's my expression. Okay, let's try this again. Example 7. I'm going to give you 38x minus 28 all divided by negative 2. Okay, what I want to first do is split this up into two parts. So the negative 2 goes with the first term as well as the second term. So I have 38x divided by negative 2. And in the second term I have negative 28 divided by negative 2. Okay, the 2 goes with each term. Now, 38 divided by negative 2. Clear? 38 divided by negative 2. Type that in, I end up with negative 19. And make sure you bring your x down. And then I have negative 28 divided by negative 2. Gives me 14. And that 14 was a positive, so I'll put a plus sign in front of the 14, and there is my simplified expression. Okay. Alright, on the back of your page we're going to do our independent practice. I'm going to write a couple problems down on this overhead I want you to work. So here we go. Number 1, I want you to find the multiplicative inverse. For negative 2 over 5. Okay, number 2, I want you to go ahead and divide, find out what this equals, solve it, and I'm going to give you 1/2 divided by 3/4. Okay, and then number 3, I'll give you 12x minus 8 all divided by 4. And then let me give you your last one. 3a plus 4 divided by 2. And realize these last two, you're simplifying your expression. This is our simplify. Whoops, there you go. Alright, there's your 4 practice problems. When you have those completed, I'll give you your worksheet to do in class.